Welcome, friends, to a special briefing brought to you by JReady, the Jewish Agency's platform for crisis response and community resilience, in partnership with the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs. My name is Sam Robinson, and I am honored to manage JReady's global partnerships, working with Jewish communities around the world to map challenges and curate responses to meet the respective needs of each of your communities. As you'll know, since Friday, Israel has been facing ballistic missile attacks in their hundreds, sustaining heavy damage to property and, unfortunately, a rising number of casualties, including dozens of fatalities and over 700 injured. It's important to note that this is not a new phase of the war that Israel's been embroiled in since October 7th, 2023, but rather a whole different level of war on a much larger, much more sophisticated, and much more challenging front. Meanwhile, we must not lose sight of the fact that there are still 53 hostages being held in Gaza, with indications that a number are still alive. The Iranian regime's nuclear capabilities are not just a threat to Israel, but to global stability. For us at the Jewish Agency, our focus is, as always, on strengthening Israeli society and reinforcing our cherished global communities, fortifying you, community leadership, and active members with the tools to build further resilience. This webinar is focused on strategic communication during times of emergency, bringing you a briefing on the current situation, its impact on your communities, and a workshop designed to provide you with the tools to decipher accurate, verified channels of information and strategies for effective communication and Israel advocacy. We have some phenomenal speakers and a lot of information to impart, so it's likely that this webinar will go on a little more than an hour. But note that we are also in the process of arranging additional webinars and updates, and of course, we'll keep you all posted. I'll mention at this point that you're welcome to write in the Q&A, and if we have time, hopefully we'll have time, we'll try to answer some of your questions live towards the end. But before we get started, I'm pleased to invite one of our key partners, the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs, to share a few words. Amichai Shikli, Minister of Diaspora Affairs and Combating Anti-Semitism, the floor is yours.
So, shalom lekulam. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for the initiative. Just a few words to describe the situation from the perspective of the government. So we are now at the 5th day of this, let's say, escalation in the operation against Iran. So far, we had 22 casualties, civilian casualties, from the ballistic missiles. The ballistic missiles that were shot into Israel are not what we were used to with Hezbollah or Hamas. These are 300 kilo to 600 kilo heads of explosive. That's a much more serious threat. We do see a decline in the amount of missiles that are being fired in recent, let's say, in the last 24 hours. It seems that it's more difficult for the Iranians to launch these attacks. And so these are the regarding to what the enemy is doing. In regarding to what we are doing, so there are, as you all saw, there are amazing achievements. Basically, we are working against two main existential threats. One is the project of the ballistic missiles, and the second one is the nuclear plan. Against the ballistic missiles, the plan of the Iranian was to have 8,000 ballistic missiles. With such an amount of ballistic missiles, it would it would be a almost impossible challenge for the air defense system, and therefore the IDF has basically attacked most of the industry factories that are producing these missiles. Many launchers were hit, and also much of the arsenal that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has. This is regarding the ballistic missiles threat. As for now, we estimate that more than 1/3 of the arsenal of ballistic missiles was eliminated. Regarding the nuclear threat, the main achievement is the assault against 14 top experts, engineers, scientists of the Iranians that were developing the nuclear program, the destruction of the archive where all the information with the plan was held. And as you know, there were attacks against the Natanz, where they enriched uranium. Thousands of centrifuges were hit. This is super important. Isfahan, which is also a strategic component of the plan. And we have the challenge of Bordeaux, which is a much more serious challenge in a very steep mountain area. Bordeaux is in the heart of the ground, 80 meters beneath the ground. That's a more complicated challenge, but now when we have full control over the sky in Iran, this is a mission that is, as far as I understand, is being handled, and I hope that we will see results. It's very, very important that we will not be in a situation in which the Iranian can recover the program in the next coming years. Regarding to the replacement of the regime in Iran, to change the regime, it's very important to be accurate. Israel has no intention to set this goal as an operative goal, meaning to do like to send troops or military police to change the regime in Iran. The only one who can change the regime are the Iranian people. We obviously encourage the Iranian people to do it. We obviously encourage the Iranian opposition. I think that we think that this is a vicious regime, a brutal dictatorship. We all recall Masha Amini that was murdered brutally because of not wearing a hijab. We all know how this regime treats gay people and basically everyone who oppose their control. So that is regarding the change of the regime. We hope that it will happen. We are willing to attack also targets that may help this cause, but changing the regime is something that only the Iranian people can do. So these are like the main, I think, the main topics from the perspective of the government. The Minister of Diaspora Affairs is focused now on the monitoring system, trying to find, based on OSINT, which is open source intelligence, any attempt to attack Jewish communities, embassies, etc. And I think it's very, very important for Jewish communities to be highly alert to any suspicious signs and to make sure that all the measures are being taken to bring safety to maximum, because it's obvious. We all recall the horrific terror attacks against AMIA in Buenos Aires, against the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires, led by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They will seek revenge. They have the ability to do it outside, in Latin America, in Europe. And I think that leaders of Jewish communities need to work with the organizations of the community, security organization of the community, and to be on top alert to make sure we don't create an opportunity for the terrorists to take revenge and hit Jewish communities. I don't want to speak too much, so that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Minister. And I also want to say a note of thanks to all of our dear friends at the ministry for your unwavering support for JReady's initiatives on behalf of all diaspora communities. Thank you. Now, I once again have the tremendous privilege of introducing a woman who really needs no introduction, Ayelet Nahmias Verbin, Chair of JReady and the Fund for Victims of Terror at the Jewish Agency for Israel. Ayelet.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Minister Shikli. I hope you can see that I'm wearing a shirt with the Israeli flag. I'm very proud. These are moments in which I'm more proud than ever to be an Israeli and to wear the Israeli flag. I also have on my sleeve October 7th, 2023, because not for a moment do we forget that we have 53 hostages in Gaza. Thank you and good evening, everyone. First, I want to express my deep appreciation to each and every one of you for joining us tonight. In these incredibly difficult and uncertain times, your presence, your commitment to your communities means so much to us. As Operation Rising Lion unfolds, Israel and Jewish communities around the world are facing unprecedented challenges. It's really important for me always to stress out is that we see you. As much as we're going through here, we always see you and we always think about you. Not only on the ground, but also in the information arena. That's the challenge that we are all facing. And we know that you are facing it even more than we do, even on October 7th. I know that Amira Aronovich, who was once the CEO of the Jewish Agency, has joined us. Thank you, Amira, for being here tonight. And I just want to mention that even after October 7th, with everything we went through, on October 12th, Amira and I already went up on a JReady Zoom. At that point, we still haven't partnered with the Ministry of Diaspora, but it was very important for us to share all the information that we had with the communities, with our brothers and sisters around the world. Sam is nodding her head because she remembers, we remember that. The narratives forming in real time have a powerful impact, and our response must be thoughtful, strategic, and unified, and that's why we convened here tonight. Tonight's session is not only about understanding the current situation, it's about empowering you with the tools and clarity to speak, engage, and support your communities through the complex communication landscape we're navigating. JReady has been in place for nearly 5 years, and I'm glad we've been able to work with over 55 communities in very trying times during COVID, Russia-Ukraine war, Iron Swords following October 7th, and now Rising Lion aiming to prevent Iran from having a nuclear bomb. In past couple of days, in my other role as chair of the Fund for the Victims of Terror of the Jewish Agency, I went to see the sites where Iranian missiles hit. The main thing I can share with you is that it's nothing like anything we've ever experienced before. 24 Israelis in 4 days have lost their lives, hundreds injured, and hundreds lost their homes. But you should see them. One eye is crying, one eye is so thankful for having survived this catastrophic event. One hand is nodding a baby stroller, and the other one hugging the other child. They are so strong. Your brothers and sisters here in Israel are so strong. They are resilient, and this is the most important thing that we are trying to do here in JReady, to share our resilience and your resilience, and we are together as one Jewish people. Thank you for being a part of this effort. Thank you to our partners in the Ministry of Diaspora for working together in order to create and spread new tools for the resilience and preparedness of our communities. Sam, I want to thank you and our JReady team, Yael Raz, Gali Ophir, Sam Robinson, Lior Sharir, who's again on reserve, for having making this possible tonight. And of course, I want to thank Yoav, Limor, and our speakers for, again, being here for the communities with us. If I could, I would hug each and every one of you. Thank you. Oh, and, sorry. And Shirley Gil-Rice, our director of JReady, incredible. She's been going through something so challenging this week. We have a fantastic delegation from Argentina, but as you can imagine, this is not an easy week. So Shirley, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being so strong, being resilient. Thank you all.
Wow, totally echoing all of those thanks. And you should know, Ayelet, in her beautiful nature, she's been nonstop visiting the victims of attacks, the sites of the damage, being interviewed by media outlets, and somehow always makes the time to be present for us. And of course, for our global communities as well. Ayelet, we are so grateful to you.
My privilege, thank you.
So from all across the board, we've been receiving requests for accurate information straight from the source. And with this in mind, we're grateful to invite a couple of representatives actually from the IDF's International Spokespersons Unit to give us a briefing on the situation on the ground. We have Major Liad Diamond, who has been an officer in the IDF for almost 20 years and has commanded several operations across every sensitive region along Israel's border. Since 2019, Liad has also served as a member of the IDF International Spokespersons Unit. We also have with us Tammy Shul, who is the head of the international social media for the IDF Spokespersons Unit, overseeing worldwide communications and strategic messaging across 10 platforms and reaching 4.5 billion viewers. So Major Liad and Tammy, thank you for being here. Over to you.
Thank you so much for having us, and good evening from somewhere here on one of the roofs in Tel Aviv. You can see the beautiful skyline of Tel Aviv. So I'll just say it first before we even begin that in case of a siren, we will have to take cover and we will disappear from the screens, but don't be alerted. This is just following the guidelines of the Home Front Command. These guidelines save lives. Thank you for Minister Shikli, who spoke beforehand, and also Ayelet Nahmias Verbin for the great work that everybody's doing. So thank you very much for having us this evening. The minister has spoken pretty much on a lot of what is going on. So I don't want to pretty much do or reiterate what he said, because he said it better than I did. So I just want to put a couple of things in context, or just to reiterate to just a couple of things. You know, I've been serving in the IDF for almost 25 years now, and I have never even thought of me saying that the IDF or the IAF has full air superiority over Iran. This is something that I say it again and again for me to believe that in almost 3 days, we have total air superiority over Iran. This is something that is unbelievable, and this is something that we have done. And one of the things, or one of the lessons learned after the 7th of October is exactly this. We will do whatever it takes to defend ourselves with our capabilities, with our soldiers, our great men and women who are currently operating pretty much everywhere. Imagine we have folks that are right now maneuvering down in the Gaza Strip. We have folks that are operating on the border, on the northern frontier, Lebanon, Syria. We still have the Houthis down in Yemen. And now we're also in Iran. Just imagine just how much the IDF has been doing for such a very long time. And of course, one of our main goals also as we perform this operation in Iran is, of course, to bring back the hostages from Gaza. This is still one of the main goals of this war. This is something that we are very much into. Although everybody's speaking about Iran and we are sharing a lot about what's going on the Eastern Front, we are operating on the ground in Gaza to bring back everybody as fast as possible. So I just want to add just another thing before I give the floor to the amazing Tommy, who's been doing tremendous work for over a year now on the social media. I just want to say that where we are, what are we doing right now? So right now, it's hunting season that we're doing on launchers, the ballistic missile launchers in Iran. We are currently hunting them down. More than 200 launchers were eliminated by the IDF since Thursday to where we are today. We are still striking different components of the nuclear plan, the nuclear program of Iran. There's still a lot of work to do there. So we're currently doing that. And at the end, personal targeting. We are targeting different officials, different commanders in the Iranian regime, specifically in the IRGC. And we still have a lot of there to do. One of the most common questions that I get as a military spokesperson is, how long is it going to take? When is it going to end? So I'll just say it out now and say, I don't know. That is the 1 million question. My wife asked me the same question. My kids are asking me the same question. Everybody who sees me on the streets, they ask me the same question. I don't know. But I do know that as long as we stay united, together, with our eyes on the ball, remember the goals that we have, we will overcome this. We will prevail. There is no other chance. There is no other way to do it. So this is the most important thing. And now, without further ado, to the amazing Tommy.
So I once again, good evening, everyone. I want to share the sentiment that was shared before me. Thank you for the honor and privilege of talking to everyone here tonight. I have to say, we as people in the army, as spokespeople, we're fighting on the front lines, but your front is not less important. The front of sharing our story with the world, sharing the experiences you're seeing, is such a vital part of us being able to do our job here on the ground. And I want to touch about how do we go about this fight with Iran. What we've seen on October 7th is that in the 21st century, winning a war is not enough just to overcome your enemy on the battleground. You also have to win the court of public opinion. We've seen this with October 7th. We've seen this with the overwhelming support for the pro-Palestinian cause, with the support for Hamas in Gaza, and we are adamant to not make the same mistakes here with this situation with Iran. The very basis of our strategy coming towards this is that this is not a battle of Israel or Gaza. This is not a battle that is only related to the people of Israel, to the Jewish nation. This is a global fight. Israel had no other choice but to act, first of all, because we are obligated to defend the people of Israel, but we're also obligated as a member of the West, a member of democratic states in the world. We are obligated to make sure we do not have a nuclear Iran on our hands. That is just something we cannot live with. So yes, Israel took the first step. Israel committed the first action to make sure Iran does not have a nuclear bomb in a matter of days. It's a very important point to emphasize. We're talking about a point of no return for a nuclear Iran, which means that if we wouldn't have taken this step, we would not have been able to prevent Iran from having a nuclear bomb. That is why the timing of this operation was so important. So yes, Israel took the first step, but this is a conflict that is much broader than the Israel-Iran conflict. This is a wider situation. This could escalate and influence the entire world. Iranian leaders have been saying they want to annihilate the state of Israel for years, but it's also accompanied by chants to end America, to end Europe, to end the UK. So it doesn't stop here. And we also have not only their rhetoric. Iran has been developing guided missiles, UAVs, nuclear capabilities that span much wider than what they need to just reach Israel. Iran currently possesses capabilities to strike almost every country in Europe. Why would they develop these capabilities if their only fight is with Israel? Which is very important to understand. So this is the first understanding that we're going into this with. The second one is that I don't personally remember this, but I'm sure my ancestors do. There was a time where Iran and the Iranian people, the Iranian Republic and Israel, the Jewish people, were great friends, were two nations based on common values, on common cultural aspects, on common history. We want to see a day where Iranian people and Israeli people can be friends again. We have no battle, no fight against the people of Iran. The people of Iran have been the #1 enemy of the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime have been trying to do everything they can to keep the Iranian people oppressed and submissive to the administration. We have no fight with them. This is why we're taking every possible precaution to make sure they're not affected by the situation. It also means that in part of our operational planning, looking back at history, we made sure to take every step necessary that while we were striking nuclear components of Iran's plan, we made sure there was no situation where the people of Iran might face the repercussions, the ramifications of that situation, whether it's a radiation effect or any other effect. We're making sure that we do everything possible to minimize that. It's also important to understand nuclear weapons, nuclear bombs are something that we see on the movie screen. We see actors getting Oscars for portraying the tragedy of nuclear weapons. But as people of the 21st century, we don't often stop and think to ourselves, what does it mean to have a terrorist regime, a regime that is looking to acquire weapons of mass destruction? What does it mean for the ordinary people? And that is a very important understanding. So we walking into this had to understand, how do we take such a complex situation like nuclear weapons, like uranium enrichment, and how do we explain it to the people of the world? Why is it a threat to you? Why is it a threat to all of us? So those are kind of the three main topics that we are trying to combat, trying to take head on. Of course, this is a developing situation. We're seeing different movements happening inside Iran. We're seeing different movements happening around the world, trying to basically help Israel and support Israel in our fight against nuclear Iran. And yeah, and we admire all of your support, and we thank you for being with us every step of the way, and may all of you stay safe.
Thank you so much, Major Liad and to Tammy. We really appreciate you making the time for us and for giving us this update. Thank you, and stay safe, stay strong. Now, defense commentator and TV host, Yoav Limor, who is a dear friend of JReady and an expert we've called upon many times to share his wisdom with our audiences. Yoav is here to provide an overview on the situation from a civilian and communication perspective, with an emphasis on the impact of Jewish communities in the diaspora. Yoav.
Thank you so much, Sam, for having me tonight, as always. Can you hear me? We're okay? Yeah, perfect. So nice being with you. Hello, everyone from everywhere. I bet we have friends from all over. Personally, I was supposed to be in South America currently. I had a ticket to Brazil and Argentina for a few speaking obligations, but Friday noon, the Friday night, the war broke, so all flights were canceled. So lucky me staying here to broadcast and write. Unlucky me for not being abroad, but that's our life in Israel. I'm sure I'll visit the communities abroad soon once the war is over. But I want to start with you before I speak about us. I'm fully aware of the delicate situation for Jewish people, for Israelis overseas. There is no reason to be shy of those risks. I'm fully aware. I was in the States a couple of weeks ago. I was amazed at the amount of anti-Semitism in schools, in campuses, in day-to-day life. I'm sure that it's all over. But furthermore, and that connects me directly to the current war, we are fully aware of Iran's capabilities. We've seen them in the past. We've seen them in Buenos Aires twice, in 1992 and 1994, bombing firstly the Israeli embassy and secondly the AMIA, the Jewish Organizations building. We've seen them many times trying and sometimes succeeding in killing Israelis, ambassadors, groups of tourists, etc., overseas. And I think that if the regime remains, that is our soft stomach, that might be their easiest way to counter Israel, to hit us, trying to bomb an embassy, to kill a group of Israelis, to attack a synagogue, to try to shoot down an Israeli airplane, etc., etc. As I said, we shouldn't be shy of the risks, and we should take all measures to protect ourselves. So that's to begin with, personally and community-wise. And that's why I started with you, because I think that's our soft stomach, and we should look at that. You should look at that, and we as Israel should look at that, and we should work together trying to counter that. So that's, as I look at you, I think one more thing, I think that you should do whatever you can to protect yourself personally, community-wise, and governments, police, organizations, etc., should do their utmost to assist in that, because it's not an Israeli or Jewish matter. It's a matter of all governments that are fighting terrorism, that are looking at what's going on, and as you are their citizens, so they should do that to guard you, to keep you safe, etc., etc. And it's going to be quite a mission. So be safe, and that's as far as I'm looking at what's going on around the world. Now, coming to our arena, I'll try to put a few to put a few spots on what's going on. Israel, why we went into this war, what we're trying to achieve, and what are the key ingredients that we should look at from now on. So firstly and shortly, why are we into this war? Israel found itself in the past few weeks in a very unique position, whereas Iran is relatively weak because it lost most of its aerial defense due to Israel's attacks in October of 2024 and at April 2024. So it was much easier than in the past to reach Iran for the Israeli Air Force. That's one. Secondly, it lost most of its proxies that were built to enable Iran or to deny or deter Israel from attacking Iran, mainly Hezbollah, which Israel hit strongly between September and November of 2024. So it lost most of its power, regional power. Thirdly, the Israeli intelligence, combined by the IDF intelligence and the Mossad, pointed that Iran might be rushing to a nuclear capability that A, we won't be able to stop, B, we won't be able to deter, C, we won't be able to detect on time. And that brought the Israeli intelligence to alarm the decision makers in Israel that now it's the time. And there were quite a few meetings in Israeli cabinet, in Israeli army, etc., etc., etc. And the final decision was that we must do it now. Israel wanted the US to take part. The US declined to do so, but it didn't stop Israel from doing so. President Trump, you all read and heard about it, said that he opts for Iran to go for an agreement with the US, a new nuclear agreement, but Iran put dozens of burdens stopping that agreement. And President Trump, when he went into those negotiations, he spoke of 60 days, and on the 61st day, Israel attacked. Israel wouldn't have attacked without a green light from the US. Looking backwards, the US was part of the whole Israeli plot in trying to hide and discuss its plans. So that was the way into that. You probably understand that Israel, there was a long process of preparing to that war, preparing the airplanes, preparing the pilots, preparing the intelligence, enabling Israel to pinpoint simultaneously all the high-rank commanders of the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, and the Iranian army, and all the scientists, key figure in their nuclear program, and hitting their nuclear facility in Natanz, and hitting other ingredients, etc., etc. It was all prepared and orchestrated, enabling Israel to do it simultaneously at the first moment. That was the why and how we went into that war. Currently, Israel controls Iran's skies, enabling it to practically attack everything and everywhere at any given moment, not without risks. Flying 1,500 kilometers is risky, it's dangerous. We are more than lucky, and I'm knocking on any wood around me. We have no casualties so far. I hope we won't have any, but it's nearly a miracle that the Israeli Air Force is achieving in doing so with such a high success. But still, it's a risky business. Furthermore, we are doing so without hurting, killing civilians in Iran. See the difference between us and them. Israel is doing its utmost to hit Iranians if they're involved in war, in terror, or in missiles, or in nuclear in the nuclear industry. It does not hit Iranian civilians, whereas Iran is firing rockets at Israeli cities. We've seen 24 Israelis getting killed in the past 3 days, and that's Israel's soft stomach, meaning that Israel should look at its home front, the rank of the success in killing those missiles is about 90%, which means out of every 100 Iranian missiles that are being fired at Israel, 10 are penetrating, are very thick combined Israeli-American aerial defense. 10, some of them fall in open field, some of them fall on the way in Iraq, in Saudi Arabia, in Iran, in Jordan, but some of them hit Israeli cities. As I said, 24 casualties, fatalities, hundreds of wounded Israelis, and a huge damage in quite a few cities. Israel, it's a key factor to the future of that war, because the more casualties there are in Israel, the more pressure that is going to be put on the Israeli government to either to stop the war or to take tougher measures towards Iran. And there we might start playing with the idea of trying to change the regime in Tehran. You can hear hints about it in Israeli media, from Israeli decision makers and around the world. There are, as in every field, there are pros and cons for such a decision. The good thing is that we get rid of one of the worst regimes in the world. The bad thing is we don't know who's going to come. We might get a worse regime. We might get some kind of Iraq, whereas everybody is fighting everybody, and inside Iran and outside of Iran. Iran is a huge state. 90 million Iranians live in Iran. The size is 80 times the size of Israel. So you go into such a journey, you can't be certain how you come out of it. One must admit. The other option that Israel came into the war with, the idea was to hit the nuclear program as hard that it will delay Iran for many years and enable the international arena led by the US to reach a better nuclear deal than the one that was reached in 2015 and the one that was negotiated in the past couple of months, meaning that Iran will be brought in a way to its knees and agree to terms that it didn't agree in the past, mainly enriching uranium, building new facilities, installing new centrifuges, and etc., etc. That's the situation now. The king looking for the future. The main thing that you should look at is if the US is going to join. I think that listening to President Trump, if I had to gamble, and I'm not a gambler, I'm not, but if I had to, if there was a gun pointed to my head, there are more, listening to President Trump today and many other hints, there are more chances for yes than for no. That's my perception, and it might be soon. What will the Americans try to achieve? Two things. One, killing the main enrichment facility in Iran, which was built deep in the mountains of Fordo, close to the most sacred cities to the Shia in Qom, central Iran. Israel is shy in doing so because there is a limit to penetrating abilities of our bombs, whereas the U.S. Air Force can bring much heavier bombs and go for a continuous operation that can kill that site within a few days. If the Americans will do so, they will practically take Iran backwards with their program a long time. But that will put a huge pressure on the regime to stop the war and practically, as President Trump said today, to surrender. What surrender means, we have many examples in the history. You can go to Germany 1945, you can go to Japan 1945, or you can look at other examples. I don't know what runs inside President Trump's head. I'm not sure anybody knows. I think Israel, and I'm looking from the Israeli angle, Israel should look for an agreement that will make sure that Iran doesn't become nuclear, not only because nuclear Iran is horrible for Iran, for Israel, for the Middle East, and for the whole world. You see what they're doing now. You saw their plots. You saw October 7. Hamas was funded by them. So you understand what they will do if they have a nuclear capability backed by thousands and thousands of rockets, by proxies surrounding us, etc., etc. It's a death plan for Israel. So Israel must make sure that Iran doesn't become nuclear. That's to begin with. Secondly, that Iran won't be able to produce masses of rockets and to deliver them to its proxies. That secondly, and thirdly, that Iran won't be able to spread its terror plans in the area and around the world. If those three ingredients, nuclear, missiles, and terror, are inside this deal, Israel will be okay, and the regime in Tehran will be weak. And then we might see internal forces within Iran trying to conquer, trying to kill, trying to drop down this vicious regime. We've seen such attempts quite a few times, 2009 and 2015 and 2020 and 21 with Masa Amini and the big wave of brave Iranian women coming out of the streets. We might see that again. But I'm not sure that I want to see Israel doing that, because we might turn the Iranian people and many of the other people in the area against Israel. The best scenario is that Israel keeps those three ingredients that I said, nuclear, missiles, and terror, as far as possible from that regime, and leave the rest for the Iranian people. I trust them that they'll know to do the job. So that's what lies in the future. As I said, first key factor is what the US is going to do. I think that we're very close to an American intervention in that war. Then Israel will have to cut that war as short as possible to keep our home front safe, to keep our citizens safe, to open our economy, to open our ports, to be able to come back and to fly, etc., etc. Once the Americans are in, it's not only our war, it's their war as well. We have the big brother with us, and the big brother is really big. And then we keep the Russians out and the Chinese out, etc. And then the Americans not only will come in, they will make sure that the outcome, the agreement, will be very strong and safe for Israel and for the world. And I'll sum up with two more things. Firstly, not most importantly, but firstly, we have a unique opportunity by weakening Iran to change the Middle East, practically, dramatically, to strengthen the Sunni path led by Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Egypt, in a way that we leave the Shiite aside. Israel can be a key factor in that Sunni path or chain or alignment or whatever you want to call it. And we might find ourselves within peace or normalization agreements with Saudi Arabia and with other Sunni Muslim states, because Israel currently, and unlike October 7, in which Israel was in its lowest point and its deterrent was nearly shattered, currently Israel is being looked at its strongest point, and our deterrence seems unbeaten. So Israel should use it to reach those agreements from a position of power in which we are now, and we must not lose it. Secondly, and more importantly, we have 53 Israelis that are being kept in Gaza, 20 out of them alive. And Israel must do everything to get them home safe as soon as possible. maybe by ending that war in Gaza, kicking Hamas out of Gaza, getting a new regime in Gaza, getting Gaza rebuilt, and making sure that October 7 will never happen again. But that must start by bringing the Israelis from Gaza back home. So if I had to sum it all up, Israel is in its strongest position, but we must take a few measures to make sure that this remains, which means short wars, as we say in basketball, eyes on the ball, don't be tempted to look at other things, hope for the Americans to intervene because it will be much shorter, hostages, and everyone keep safe. Please keep safe, because it's our war in Israel, but as you well know, we are mishpucha, we are family, so we are all connected. So practically, it's our war, yours as well. So thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you so much, Yoav. I think there are very few people who are able to really analyze and articulate the situation as expertly as you. So we so appreciate your time and, of course, your assessment of the reality on the ground, both here in Israel, in the region, and indeed the broader global implications of this war. So Yoav, thank you so much. And now we promised you all that we would fortify you with some practical tools. So here we go. Yaron Chayat is an international specialist in communication and Israel advocacy, working for the global organization Vayomar. Yaron is going to lead us through the next half hour or so and share some tools on how to navigate the dominant international media narratives, also lead us through effective messaging and how to maintain consistency in such chaotic times as these. Yaron, over to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Sam. You hear me okay right now?
We do.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to maybe continue just a second about what you had to say about, keeping safe, which is super important, obviously, to everybody, both in Israel and outside as well. But also connect this idea of a prolonged war and the time this is going to take, which is, by the way, also when looking at communication, if you are consuming a lot of Israeli media as well, and also outside as well. One of the things, or one of the paradigms, I think, that everybody had in Israel, and that goes for the media as well, was that if we'll have to attack in Iran, it will be kind of a one massive strike or maybe two or something like that, right? Because it's going to be costly, it's going to be dangerous, it's going to be very long, it's going to be very hard to actually do. And therefore, like everybody, we're in the mindset of we're going to go, we're going to hit as hard as we can, hopefully we're going to destroy as much as we can, and big rumble, and then everything will smooth down and start, like an earthquake that ends, and now there's some calm and it will dissipate. And what we're seeing right now, which really is incredible, is while having this massive air superiority over Iran, and being in my past an Air Force intelligence officer, I was training for this 20 years ago or so, but we are in such a different place that we are there 24/7, and we are acting there again and again. And, if, like Yoav said, if the US comes in, if it comes in fast enough and shorten this engagement, that would be great. But if not, and, instead of doing this with their large bombs, we'll have to peel off a piece of rock every day, this might be very much prolonged, right? And we tend to get used to reality. And we need to remember this, the longer this gets, we should not forget about our safety, right? And we should not get comfortable. Always, keep that both here and, taking into account all the instructions we get what to do when the siren goes off, but also obviously in your community around the world. I have a quick question that I would love if you can answer in chat just for a second, because Vayomar, myself and maybe Ariel from Vayomar, have been engaging with various activities of pro-Israeli advocacy. I'm just wondering, with a quick yes, if you've ever encountered Vayomar or in our methodologies and some of our tools with regards to advocacy about Israel in general. Okay, just want to get it clear. Okay, Okay, get some no's. I have a yes. Okay. Okay, so currently I see more no's than yeses. Perfect. Okay, so I want to align, I want to start from the very beginning just for a second, right? One of the things we tend to see in the media, especially when there's this war going on, right? There's a hectic event, everybody's covering it, right? There's 24/7 kind of coverage and breaking news all the time. This just happened, rocket's been fired, this was bombed, that was killed, right? There's a lot of chaos. One of the most important things we can do is stick to a message, right? We want to create clarity, and the more chaos it is, the more clarity is required, and you want to hold that same narrative time and time again, right? So we heard before, right, from the spokesman from the IDF, that part of that narrative that Israel is hammering, and if you'll see anyone, any official being interviewed, right? And this is something you can definitely adopt into your own messaging when you are talking perhaps to neighbors, co-workers who are not Jewish who might be asking you questions, right, about the situation, not necessarily being hostile, but being interested, right? Incorporating that same message of this is not just Israel's war. This is actually about the world, right? This is about Iran posing a danger to the world. And we know that because they're developing weapons that can reach the entirety of Europe now, and they're working on missiles that can reach the eastern seaboard of the United States. Why are they doing? And they're trying to get a bomb, right? So this idea, this core message of this is a war of defense, but it's not just Israel. Israel is doing this actually for everybody, is a key message we need to incorporate. And at the end of the day, kind of revert into that time and time again. Now, just looking at persuasion, or specifically Israeli advocacy, I want to draw in a second sort of a comparison between what we're seeing or what we saw in the Gaza campaign and the criticism about Israel and the narrative about Israel versus what is happening now. By the way, one of the interesting things is currently, although the campaign in Gaza is continuing, we see the media's attention has really much shifted into Iran, right? Very much covering what's going on there. And Gaza is more forgotten because, it's yesterday's news, if to be cynical for a moment, unless something dramatic will happen there and draw attention back. Now, this is the interesting thing. Now, there's a couple of things that are actually working in our favor, okay? First of all, in the Palestinian-Israel conflict, Israel is perceived to be strong, Palestinians are weak, right? We're occupying them, they are the one who being oppressed, and we, the world looks at them as the poorer side that needs the support and needs to get their freedom. Drawing that into the Iran conflict, that doesn't exist, right? Iran is perceived to be as strong as Israel, if not more so, right? Much larger country, much bigger, has a wide arsenal of ballistic missiles, right? And it's not something that is not well known, okay? So we're kind of perceived as equals and not a strong versus a weak person dynamic, which works in our favor. The other thing, the pro-Palestinian movements, narratives, and all the propaganda did not start in the last campaign, right? That's been building up for tens of years already, right? And posing as, again, freedom fighters and being oppressed, and all of that narrative has been building up for years about, the Palestinians need to get a country, or they're being blockaded, right? Even 10 years ago, or since the blockade after the last operation in Gaza, right? So we had kind of a pre-existing court of opinion that already deemed the Palestinians as justified, in a sense. Now, the horrors of October 7 changed that, but they changed it for a very limited time, right? Because as we see more and more pictures out of Gaza, right, that started to shift away, and they were able to show that they are very much the victim here, right? Look at all the destruction of Gaza and look at all the people who died. Again, when we looked at this specific conflict, at least currently, that doesn't exist either, First of all, I don't know of any movement in the past 10 years or more that is looking for Iran's freedom to develop nuclear weapons, right? That they don't have that court of opinion that's for them for that basis, right? And also, when we see currently, at least, right? And as this prolongs, we might see other things as well. But currently, at least, like Yoav said, we don't have civilian casualties, right? And also, from an explanation point of view and communication point of view, it's much easier, right? And you can see this, by the way, on all the medias when they see a lot of illustrations that the IDF is releasing, right? To see a military base, right? And justify the attack because it looks like a military base, because you can see the military installation. And now when you see people, you know, whoever was assassinated or died, they're in uniform, right? You will see soldiers of Iran, right? And that's a much easier narrative to explain, right? It's not we don't even need to explain it because it's not being judged, versus when you see a picture of dead people in Gaza, right? They look like civilians, even if they are Hamas, by the way, right? That's why Hamas is not wearing uniform. That's why Hamas is not identifying themselves. But in the end of the day, when you see a picture out of Gaza, you see building that looks like a civilian house, and you see dead bodies inside. Whether they're combatants or not, we don't know. But for the layman's eye, when you see that on their news, it's like, why did they kill civilians? They're not asking further questions. And that requires explanation versus, again, Iran. We show, you know, we can show a missile launcher that blew up or military bases. So again, from explanation point of view, what currently at least is going on with Iran, right? It's much easier because a lot of questions are not being asked, right? Because if you notice, again, drawing the comparisons, the main criticism Israel is getting about Gaza is how many civilians should die, right, while you're fighting, let's say, a just war with Hamas. The criticism is about civilians. The criticism is about starvation. The criticism is about blockade. There's a lot of criticism about that operation focused on civilian. Currently, when you draw a parallel to Iran, that doesn't exist, right? Which makes it easier for us. By the way, if we look at the world, right, in general, we see that leaders that are not necessarily pro-Israel in, you know, up until this attack, are actually backing us up. For example, Canada, if you'll take that, right? Canada has been very much outspoken against Israel in Gaza. Yet Canada is now saying, yes, Israel definitely has a right to defend itself versus Iran. If you'll take Macron of France, also been very extreme against Israel about the Palestinian side. He also said already that Israel has a right to defend itself against the aggression from Iran and a nuclear bomb, right? And again, these are not our natural friends, at least currently in the current situation. So what we're seeing, at least currently, that this very much works into our favor. But now let's look at a situation you might encounter. Okay, and I go back to this idea of talking to people, you know, that are probably next to your communities, right? Could be a neighbor from across the block, could be a colleague, someone at work, but also in the community itself. What happened if there are questions? What happened if there's a discussion? What if someone says to you something like, I don't know, why Israel has to be so aggressive and start wars all over the place, or things or along those lines, which sometimes happen as well. The first rule we need to remember is that when we're talking about communication, when we are talking about persuasion of other people, we need to remember that it is a process. Okay, if you have someone who does not agree with you, it is very unlikely you'll be able to change their mind in one conversation. You need to develop a process with them. Now, in order for that to happen, you need to have, let's call it a friendly and open discussion that ends as a positive experience to the other side, right? If somebody says, why is Israel doing something? And our response will be, what do you mean, what is Israel doing? Israel has been threatened by Iran that they will destroy him since the 70s. And they've attacked us with drones, and they're backing up Hamas, and they've done this to us. If I'll start to lash out, right, with frustration, which is justified, obviously, right, but it's based a lot on a lot of knowledge that the other side might not even have. They might not be as involved as you are in the conflicts in the Middle East, and they might not know that Iran is also chanting death to America, or is also responsible for killing of 250 Marine soldiers in Beirut as well, right? So sometimes this gap of knowledge, and there's actually something called in psychology, a cognitive bias called the curse of knowledge, which means that a lot of the times when we try to explain someone to somebody else, the problem is that we always assume a higher level of understanding the other side has. And the more we know, it's actually harder for us to explain it to other people. And sometimes it will cause us to really respond very angrily. This is much more, let's say, common when we're talking about Hamas, because their responses are usually harsher as well. If we create that clash in an argument, that's not good for us. Because if that ends with a bad experience to the other side, we basically missed out on the process of continuing this discussion with them over time. Okay, they might even say, you know something, I don't want to argue with you, maybe you're right, fine, let's leave it at that, right? Which shows you haven't convinced anyone on any of everything, and they will not want to engage with you again. And that's something we don't want to have. We want to create a good experience. Now, also, before engaging in any discussion about Israel, be that about the Palestinian conflict, be that around Iran, doesn't matter. One of the things you need to make sure and to assess is what type is your audience, right? Because there are people who are diehard pro-Israel, easy discussion. There are people who are diehard against Israel no matter what, right? And there are those who are in between. The people who are the fanatic anti-Israeli, the thing that they do is we are drawn to them like a moth to a flame. We want to show them how wrong they are. The problem is it's going to take us a lot of effort, and it's doomed for failure, okay? We want to make sure we're focusing on people who are concerned, who are curious, who wants to know, who wants to learn, who's looking for answer, who might be criticizing Israel, but again, based on something they saw, heard, not something a bit more dogmatic, right? And it's usually easy for us to see. So my first tip ever will be, first of all, identify who are you dealing with, who in the audience you're talking. Could be about in social media. You see those extremist posts, you want to veer off, right? If it's, in your neighborhood, in a bar, in the workplace, again, someone who is very die-hard, let it go. You're looking for things that are more in between that you can actually tackle and talk about, okay? So that's a very important thing. A very powerful tool that we can use, and again, since we don't have a ton of time, right, is using analogies. Analogies are very powerful, okay, in delivering a message. And now, again, it will depend on your audience. And what do I mean by that? Whenever I engage with an audience, I ask myself 3 questions, okay? Question number 1, what do they think? Right, from the very first thing that I've heard from them or saw them write on social media, or they're asking me, right? Before intuitively responding, I ask myself, what do they think, right? Basically, I'm asking myself, how do they see reality, right? If somebody, for example, would ask me, why does Israel have to go around starting wars all the time, okay, and being aggressive? I understand how they think, right? They see reality as Israel is gung-ho, looking for fight and being aggressive. The next thing I ask myself is, what do they feel, right? So if that's what they're thinking about Israel, right? That's what it seems, how are they probably feeling? What's their emotional state, right? It could be that they're frustrated that peace will never come. It could be that they're angry about how Israel is utilizing or leveraging its power in a way that is immoral in their mind, right? What is the feeling behind? Okay, that's a second thought that's very important. And the third one will be, what are they expecting? And when I mean what they expect, what did they expect out of me, right? Did they expect me to go full-blown, defense of Israel? That I will be, an extremist in their mind, that there's nothing to talk to me? Is that their expectation? And if, right? And when I ask those three questions and I understand them, then I can actually respond in kind. I can either say, listen, and treat each one of those buckets differently, right? So the first bucket, what do they think? I will try and align on reality. So for example, if I understand that they think Israel is being aggressive and doing war of aggressions, I would actually try and deal with that. I will talk about how we've been attacked on October 7th, if it's the Palestinian side, and how the fact that we initiate this does not mean we're the aggressors, right? And then we can go back to that narrative about self-defense and about Iran saying that they want to destroy Israel and about them developing the nuclear bomb. And I can try and deal with the difference in how we see reality, right? If I see that the feeling, right, ask myself, what do they feel, is a feeling that I can treat, right? For example, if they're, so frustrated, the peace would never come. That's how I hear their arguments. Again, if I'm in person, if I'm on social media, it might be a bit more difficult. I will try and attach myself to that feeling. I would say I can see, right? I can see you're so frustrated and you lost hope that peace will come, right? And be with them in that moment, right? Create empathy, create a connection between us. And the first piece about that expectations, if they expect me to do something, I would usually try to see how can I actually surprise them? Can I break that expectation, right? Because if I am able to break the expectations, I'm suddenly interesting. I'm suddenly someone they can listen to, right? I'm suddenly not dogmatic. One of the things we've seen since the rise of social media is people are 100% polarized, right? You're either this or you're that. It's like 100%. We forget we don't have to be. So I had actually a group in JReady that I had a discussion with once. And one of the participants asked me a question at the end. We opened up for the question and said, listen, a lot of people are actually approaching me and saying that in Gaza, they've heard that Israeli soldiers are taking civilian Gazans and ask them to break doors or knock on doors where suspected terrorists are there. And, sometimes they can get killed. The terrorists don't know it's civilians, and they shoot them or they might explode. And people are asking me about that all the time. And what do I do? How do I defend that? Right, I'm going to give you 5 seconds to think how you're going to defend this position. And I'll give you my answer. And again, it goes to expectations, right? And go again, right? What do they think? What do they feel? What do they expect? They expect me to defend this position. But that's my intuition, right? I need to defend Israel all the time. And I'm asking, do I? So I would tell you, I would look for nuances. So for example, and for this case, I would say, listen, I think that the fact that Israel, listen, I've never heard about this, but if the IDF is taking civilians and doing this, I think that it's morally wrong. Again, by the way, if it's what I think, I might think that I think that's okay for us to endanger others in order to save our soldiers, right? I'm not telling you what to think. I'm saying if that is what you think, right? Think about it. I would say, I don't think that's right. By the way, from what I know, Israel used to have that in the past, but the Supreme Court in Israel actually ruled that to be illegal, and the IDF stopped it. And if it's happening right now, I'm pretty certain the people who are practicing this are breaking the law, shouldn't do it, and will probably go to jail. Having said all that, and I still think Israel has the right to defend itself, and the fact that we were attacked, and we should be able to, right? I don't have to be 100% dogmatic. Everything Israel does is amazing. It's okay to see that sometimes some of the things we're doing, might not sit well with us. And it's okay to say that. You're not giving anything away. Actually, if anything, you're building credibility and a connection with the other side, because you now position yourself as morally aligned, right? We both agreed that taking civilians and using them that way, doesn't matter who does it, is wrong, right? We agree. And from that agreement, we can move forward, right? But that's what it actually does. It breaks that expectations, right? What they expect of me is suddenly there's uncertainty. And when they are uncertain of what they can expect, then I can actually surprise, and they would probably listen to me much more thoroughly, okay? And that's a very important piece to have. Now, I started with I said before about analogies and examples, right? And some of the things that we can talk about, or at least utilize in this case, a very good example is obviously Iraq, because Iraq was building a nuclear reactor and Israel bombed that nuclear reactor, and the entire world said that is very wrong. And then years later, when Kuwait was taken over by Saddam Hussein and there was an international coalition against them, the world was very happy that they did not have any nuclear weapons as part of that. I think we can all imagine what would have happened, right, if Saddam Hussein would have invaded Kuwait and had nuclear weapons. What did the world would have done then? So that's an example, but I'm connected that to what I've said before, right, about what do they think, feel, and expect. Why? Sometimes, and that's part of the problem that the Israel narrative is finding difficulties in the world, is then we say Iran wants to destroy Israel. Think of the people you engage with and have these discussions with. Do you think that they think that if Iran had a nuclear bomb, it will launch it on Israel and destroy it? Right? Let's, write it in chat. What do you think? People you converse with outside of your communities, and you say, Iran wants to destroy Israel, and if it had nuclear weapon, it will go ahead and do it. Do you think the people you converse find that reasonable? So I see yes, I see no. Yes, perhaps, okay, no, yes, okay, well, quite diverse, not everyone, perfect. No, thank you, Amila. Okay, great, so this exactly, people do not understand the Islamic regime, David, 100%, I agree, for sure, yes, Pilar, perfect, okay. Our national broadcaster says, okay. Okay, perfect, so I see a diverse response, okay. And this is exactly the important thing of gauging your audience. If I think that my audience truly believe that if Iran had the nuclear bomb, they would destroy Israel, right? I would say probably, right, your engagement and your ability to explain Israel's position is much easier, right? Because then, the claim for self-defense is very much out there. They will understand everything, and we have a very good basis to continue on. But exactly like David told me in chat, some people don't understand this nature of fundamentalist regimes, right? And the fact that they are saying that they will do it, they're not convinced, right? They might say, I don't think so. It's just rhetorics. Doesn't make sense to them because, again, we gauge it with our own morality and our own understanding, and then we say that doesn't make sense. I don't think so. So when that happens, there are two options. Option one, we can try and convince them that is true. For example, we can say, can you think of any country in the world that is threatening to destroy another country? I know of countries who threaten to conquer. China says she wants to take over Taiwan. Russia wants to take over Ukraine, but they're not talking about destroying them, right? The only country I know of in the world that talks about the utter destruction of another entity is Iran. The other thing that I see is that Iran has actually committed acts of aggressions against Israel, like launching an attack during the Gaza campaign, like building an army of proxies that, like Hezbollah, is attacking Israel. I would try and explain the basis of, yes, Iran is probably, that's why I think Iran means business when it says want to destroy Israel. And basically the entire conversation is about that core principle. The second one, right, I can go a tier lower than that. All right, so for example, I can say, okay, I can say, instead of that, you know something, even if they don't want to destroy Israel, do you think Iran would behave differently if they had the nuclear weapon as a deterrence? And again, give analogies. For example, let's look at Russia, right? Russia says, when the US says we're going to intervene in the Ukraine, Russia said, don't forget we have nuclear weapons, and nothing happened, right? So that's an analogy from very similar situation of how do we deal, or how does the world deal with nuclear armed power when they are aggressive? And the answer is not that well, right? So that's another point or another way of looking at it as well, right? Now, the last actual tool we want to have, and that's a tool that you can use, again, in the Palestinian arena, in the Iranian arena, in any arena about Israel, is role reversal. At the end of the day, we find ourselves as Israelis always needing to explain and defend ourselves. By the way, one of the reasons I don't like the word hasbara, right, for Israel, is that it actually means explaining. Like everybody comes to us and say, oh, Israel done this, please explain, right? Israel has committed that, explain, right? We're always in a position when we need to explain ourselves. Role reversal is all about flipping that, okay, to the other party we're talking to and asking them about what would they do in that same situation. And the way we do it is not about trying to make them fail. It's not about, you see you can do it, you see you can solve the problem. It's about putting them in the position when they need to analyze a situation in a way that usually is much deeper than what they have. Because again, if we're realistic, most people we engage with who have an opinion about Israel are not spending day in and day out thinking about what's happening and trying to solve the problem, right? And a lot of the times trying to make them think just a little bit more would change their perspective very much, okay? So it could be about what would you have done if, which is a great opportunity, right? And in Iran's case, for example, I would kind of put things together. I would use an analogy plus the role reversal as well, right? So I would probably ask somebody who says, you know, I don't think Iran would have tried really to destroy Israel, and I don't think that it was a good idea for you to be so aggressive against Iran, right? I would create an analogy, and then on that analogy, do a role reversal. For example, I would say if you live in a neighborhood and your neighbors start saying, I'm going to kill you, right? He sees you walk in your driveway, he sees you from the fence and he looks at you and he said, I'm going to kill you one day. I hate you. I'm going to kill you. What would you do? What would you do if you know that neighbor is buying guns, right? In a I don't know if it's in a country that's legal or not, right? But you know he's stocking up on weapons, and he keeps saying, "I'm going to kill you one day," right? So you might say, "I would," they might say, "I would I would move a house. I would go somewhere else." Okay, amazing. What if you can't? I would call the police, right? And at the end of the day, it's kind of okay. I'm gonna get guns, right? I'm gonna do this, right? What if you hear him over the fence talking to his wife, saying, get me the shotgun, I'm gonna kill him now. What now would you do? Would you shoot first, or would you wait? Right? And it's creating an analogy that they might look at this in a different perspective. But also, again, I would always ask them, so what would you do? What would you do if this would happen? If this is the situation? And I go back full circle to the initial principle. I don't want to do this in a way that they will feel like I've won an argument with them. That, oh, you see, I told you you do exactly like Israel, right? That's not my intention. my intention is to allow them to think in a way that will crack their confidence, that they will say, you know, something, I can see maybe, you know, that I would do this and not just wait. You know, I'm not certain. I don't need certainty. Cracking their certainty is good enough for me, right? If they say, you know, something, I don't know, I'm not sure what I would shoot first, but I would definitely think about it and maybe I'll do this and I don't know. That uncertainty, right, is good enough. And you will reach that uncertainty by asking them questions and making them think about the different solutions, right? And that's a very powerful way of getting them to think. They might stick their ground and maybe they'll even come with an amazing solution themselves. And that'd be great, right? And by the way, I would recognize that. I would say, listen, you know something, I haven't thought of that. That, you know, that's interesting. Let's talk more. But the main idea behind everything is I'm going to continue the conversation. I'm doing this in a way that's going to promote a discussion. Okay? So just want to sum up. It was way out of time, but everything went a bit haywire. Okay? So I want to cover the principles. First one, communication and persuasion takes time. It's not a one-shot thing. And in order to have a persuasive discussion or a process, we need to do it in a way that does not cause a bad feeling at the other party. It doesn't end as an argument. It ends with we still don't agree with one another, but it's okay. It's done respectfully and easily. That's one thing. The second thing is this idea of analogies, okay, put together with this idea of role reversal. Can we make the other side think what they would do in the same situation? And can we think of specific analogies that will make it much closer to heart and believable? And in general, whenever we engage with people and we start hearing their perspectives, we want to ask ourselves, wait a second, what is that person actually thinking? How do they see reality? What's their mental state? What do they feel, right? And what is their expectations from me in this discussion? Understanding all of these three will allow us to better tailor ourselves into agreeing with them. But in the end of the day, we want to return back full circle to that key message that goes through anyone you'll see anywhere. This is not about Israel. This is about the world. And nuclear Iran is threatening Israel, is threatening Europe, is threatening the United States. And that is a key message that needs to return and revolve back and back again and connect to everything we see in the media.
Thank you. Thank you, Yaron. Okay, I'm back. Here we go. Thank you, Yaron, for sharing those efficient and beneficial tools. I'm sure we've all gained significantly from it. And also, I can see that we still have like 90% of the participants still online, which means something special after an hour and a half. Guys, I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to answer your questions live, but we welcome you to reach out to us at jready@jaffe.org and access our resources on the JReady platform, jready.org, and follow us, of course, on social media. We would love for you to reach out and get involved. I want to take a moment also to thank all of our speakers from today, and another note of thanks to the amazing team at JReady, to Yael, Shirley, Gali, and of course, Lior, who is currently serving in reserve duty once again. We pray for his safe and speedy return home and to civilian life. And of course, thanks to our chairperson, Ayelet Nahmias Verbin. And to all of you who have joined us from around the world, thank you so much for being with us here today and always. We all continue to pray for the protection of our brave IDF soldiers, of course, for the swift return of all of the hostages to their families, and for the safety and security of Israel and of all of our communities around the world. I just want to conclude with some final words from President Isaac Herzog. He just said recently as follows: "The path ahead will not be easy. We will continue to face challenges head on, knowing that once again, good will triumph over evil and light will prevail over darkness." Am Yisrael Chai.